people are interesting in the way they communicate and the things they say sometimes without thinking about it. Case in point, say things all the time without thinking about it. But a few weeks back, I was at Cuts Forest Marketplace grabbing a few things for lunch. And I was in line and talking to the checker who was there. And they looked at me and, they said something, "Oh, Tim, how are things going?" And the lady behind me in line, I didn't recognize her whatsoever. She goes, "Oh, it is you." And I said, "It is." and she said, I remember you from when you used to work here a long time ago. And she reached up and she touched my cheek and she goes, "You've gotten older." And I said, that tends to happen. And I almost said, "And you've gotten really old." But again, put it in check. I don't know who she was. And it was just one of those things where in the moment I felt so awkward and stuff. And, I thought about it that night. I thought about it when I woke up in the middle of the night. I thought about it the next day. And it kind of stuck with me. And I finally realized, actually, that's good what she said. She didn't say I look old, just older, right? And that's the reality. I'm not old, just older. But it's one of those things where now that I have, not only kids, but grandkids and watching stuff, you get to a stage where you start looking at life differently. And one of the realities is there's going to come a day where probably nobody will remember me, right? Probably no one will remember me unless they happen to walk past a headstone or something and see my name. If I have a headstone, I don't know what your plans are for burial. I don't know if my kids will do this, but they asked me once, "Dad, do you want to be buried or cremated, or what do you want?" And I said, "Here's what I'm going to put in my will. If you want to be in the will, there's a hitch. I want to be cremated. I want you to take my ashes somewhere to somebody who can mix it in with ink, and then I want you to tattoo yourself with that ink so I will always be with you." And I don't know. I don't think they're going to do that, but and I don't know if that's scriptural or not, but whatever. I look at that, and here's the amazing thing. Time goes on, and it goes on, and yet, like tonight, as we read the Word of God, we're reading about events that took place 3,000 years ago. 3,000 years ago, something happened in a very small nation on the face of the earth. But because it took place 3,000 years ago, the circumstances are so unique that 3,000 years later, it still has implications for what is happening in the world today. We're going to be in 2 Samuel chapter 5, verses 1 to 25. And, if you've noticed, one of the things that I tend to do in studying is try to come up with one word for each section that just reminds me what this section is about. The words for tonight are anointed, throne, victory, and fulfillment. Okay? Anointed, throne, victory, and fulfillment. This is what we read when we start this. "Then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and said, 'Behold, we are your bone and flesh. In times past, when Saul was king over us, it was you who led out and brought in Israel. And the Lord said to you, you shall be shepherd of my people Israel, and you shall be prince over Israel.' So all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and King David made a covenant with them at Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel. David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. At Hebron, he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months. And at Jerusalem, he reigned over all Israel and Judah 33 years. We'll stop there. In case you weren't here last week, where are we in the book and what has taken place? We saw through the book of 1 Samuel, Act 1 of the Samuels, that we got to a place where King Saul died. He was judged by the Lord for his sin because he rebelled against God and didn't carry out what he was supposed to against the Amalekites, and because he sought a necromancer in order to get information. Because of that, he died. After that, there's a 2-year period of time where there's civil war taking place in Israel. David's own tribe, the people of Judah, anoint him to be king, while in the north, Ishbosheth, one of the sons of Saul, is anointed to be king. So for the first 2 years, it's a divide. Judah, southern, and all of these northern tribes plus Benjamin. It's a little bit interesting because eventually it'll end up split again like that. In the time of David's grandson, he will tax the people so hard that the nation of Israel is going to split back into two once again, and it'll end up being the tribe of Judah, right? And within that, the tribe of Simeon was there, but by this time, it's already just absorbed into Judah. Benjamin ends up actually by that time getting absorbed into Judah because Judah is so large and so powerful. But then you have the northern tribes. And so you end up with Israel and with Judah. But what we come to in this story is Ishbosheth has been assassinated. The northern tribes don't have a king anymore. And they're at a place where they're ready to come and once again be united as the people of Israel. And for the reigns of David and his son Solomon, it will be one nation under God, indivisible, right? You look at it, and it's just a cool place to be. All of the people come together. That's what it says. Now, it's not that there were millions of people coming to one place. What we read in a previous chapter is that Abner had already been speaking with all the elders of the northern tribes. He's gone to all the leaders in those tribes, and they're all ready to come together as one people, to have the civil war stop. So what takes place is it's all of their leaders and the people of power all coming together at this time. And it's pretty neat what you see happen here. Their words, behold, we are your bone and flesh. In some ways, what does that remind you of? Do you remember what we talked about last Sunday? We were talking about marriage last Sunday, and we moved from 2 Samuel chapters 3 and 4 all the way back to Genesis and looked at what marriage was, how God designed marriage. And there are those words, you are bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. And then the statements, and the two shall become one. Pretty interesting. They're using that same type of verbiage here. They were, for 2 years, a split people, two different nations. And now they're saying, no, we are now one once again. Bone of the bone, flesh of the flesh. We are bone and flesh. And it speaks to the unity that is taking place. I love that. I love that. You hear me talk about unity at our church a lot. Why? Because unity has to be fought for, guarded, protected. One of the mistakes that we get in as pastors who preach is that we always think we have to come up with something new, something exciting, something that's super refreshing, and all of a sudden you get the aha moment. I'm now connecting dots and light bulbs are going on. But so much of preaching is really about reminding people things we already know. That's what we're supposed to do. In fact, that's what the people of Israel were called to do, was to remind the next generation of everything the Lord has done and all of his statutes, the way to live. And every time they didn't do that, things went sideways with that generation. So it's just a reminder right here, unity once again. The Lord's people are called to be one. I love that about this church. I love the unity that we experience. And it's not that there's just uniformity, that we're all exactly the same. No, that's one of the things that's crazy about this church. When you look at all of the people that are gathered together, it's across all different age groups, across all different economics. We have people from different backgrounds. And even you look at all the different people that are coming that are believers, that are here because we want to know God more and we want to make him known to more people from so many different types of churches. So many different types of churches. How is it possible for a group that is so mixed up, maybe messed up, to all come together in one place? It's the cross of Jesus Christ. That's what it is right there when we focus on him. The first time I ever realized that was during the Billy Graham crusade in Portland back in the 90s. And it was one of the things that caught my attention as I went several times up to Central Bible Church in Portland before Billy Graham came and was involved in prayer times with teenagers and college students, just to be a part of that. And realizing there were people from all different denominations. It was kind of weird because my father was a Christian Church of Christ pastor, so I grew up at a Christian church, so people would say, what denomination are you? And I'd say, Christian. And they'd say, well, I'm a Christian too, but what denomination are you? I'd say, Christian. Well, I am too, but what denomination? Like, really confusing. I didn't understand that. But you look at it, and it's a beautiful thing that we're able to come together because we are all under the banner of Jesus Christ and him crucified. Another thing about that statement, we are your bone and flesh. It reminds me a lot of the way Paul talks about the body of Christ, right? They're talking body right there. That's what it is. And you look at it, they're coming under the headship of King David. He is the head, and in unity, they're forming the body. And what an incredible description that Paul gives when he does that in 1 Corinthians, the body of Christ. He is the head. It's one of those beautiful pictures, so many pictures that we see of how Jesus Christ operates with his church. A lot of times today we talk about the groom and the bride, that we are the bride of Christ. And that's a picture that you see in the Bible. It's talked about in churches a lot. It's also one of those things that they say in a lot of churches why they struggle to reach men, because men don't necessarily like being called a bride and stuff. So you got to watch the verbiage a little bit. But you look at it, that's one picture. We have things like, he is the vine, we are the branches, all these different illustrations. But what an incredible one, that he is the head and we are the body. And why is that incredible? Because each of us has a part within that. It takes all of us, each of us coming together to make the whole. All these different parts are needed. And the parts sometimes that we kind of don't think about, isn't it amazing how when they hurt, you really think about them, right? I always appreciate my friend Vern Walker. Vern and Debbie, when they're able to be here, they're here. A couple Wednesdays ago, they slipped into the back, and it was so good to see them. just was able to give them a hug. And Debbie and I were remembering back when I first started in ministry, and she was on the worship team. I was a worship pastor at the time. And we, used to sing Sunday after Sunday together. And Vern, he was an elder at the church that I was at, and was one of the people that ordained me. And his signature is on my ordination certificate. Just a neat couple to see here. I always appreciate Vern. He is one of the best Bible teachers I know. He's just an incredible Bible teacher, and yet so humble. If you ever ask him what part of the body he is, he will say, "I've always thought I was just the armpit," right? But it takes all parts. It takes all parts. What they say here, in times past when Saul was king over us, it was you who led out and brought in Israel. They've come to this point of recognizing exactly who David was. They had a king. Saul was legally their king. He was the one who, on paper, he was the one in charge. But now they're at a point that they're recognizing who it was that actually led them through all these different times. Even though on paper it was Saul, who was it? It was David. It was David. Incredible. They're finally at this point. And they recognize this, that it was the Lord, Yahweh, that said to David, "You shall be shepherd of my people, and you shall be prince over Israel." I love that. Because with those descriptions, it is a reminder of the role of David. It's a reminder. As the prince, he is royalty. He leads. He is the one who makes the laws. He is the one that is the head of state when dealing with foreign affairs. But what type of prince is he? A shepherd. He's a shepherd king, which is totally different. Totally different. I love studying leadership. I love reading leadership books, listening to leadership podcasts. It's just something I really enjoy. I love the opportunities when I get them to be able to go share with other leaders, and even times when I've gotten to go to other churches, and a lot of times when churches have been in trouble, just having boards, church boards, or pastors say, "Can you help us? How do we work out these leadership issues?" I'm incredibly thankful when I was in seminary to have taken 2 classes from a gentleman named Bob Keast. He lives in Arizona. Just an incredible pastor, Dr. Bob Keast, now a professor. And it was interesting because one day in class, something clicked for him, and he was like, "Davis, did you say Canby, Oregon?" I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "I went to Bible college with your dad," just a neat man. But Bob Keast, his entire form of leadership was servant leadership. Servant leadership. What's the difference between leadership and servant leadership? Most leaders want to lead in such a way where they lord it over people. The lowest form of leadership is people lead you, follow you, because you have the title. You have the title. It's the weakest form of leadership. But if you are able to serve the people you're called to lead, you start to gain more trust. You start to love people more. Just like a shepherd who's caring for his sheep. And I love that. Jesus is the model of leadership that the people of God should try to emulate. Servant leadership, or in his case, the shepherd king. Absolutely beautiful when you see it. And so they take Jesus and they anoint him. Jesus, David, Made a jump there. Caught myself. My point is this. They take David, and David becomes the anointed king. The anointed king. The word there, anointed, in Hebrew, what is it? Messiah. That's what Messiah is. He's the Messiah king. The Messiah king. And what we're going to see with David is even though he is a Messiah king, he is still very fallible. He still has problems, and he will eventually die. And so what comes next? Solomon. And what do they do to Solomon? They anoint him, and he becomes the anointed king, the Messiah king. But he has a lot of problems, and it's a cycle that just continues over and over and over until eventually the people start crying out to God. We need a different type of Messiah king, a different type, and God starts promising there will be one from the line of David who will be your king forever. Forever. But he's the first in this line. Now, my little Freudian slip there where I said Jesus, why am I saying that? When you come to church, what does it say when you pull into the parking lot? Christ the King. Christ is the Greek word for Messiah. Messiah. Maybe we need to rearrange the words, although it'd be too expensive to do it on the sign, right? Because it would be like saying of David, he is Messiah the King, anointed the King, right? No, he's the anointed King. And Jesus Christ, Christ the King, he is the Christ King. That's the actual title, the Christ King. Incredible when you look at that way. Verse 6, wow, we really got far. Verse 6. And the king and his men went to Jerusalem against the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, who said to David, you will not come in here, but the blind and the lame will ward you off, thinking, David cannot come in here. Nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion, that is, the city of David. And David said on that day, whoever would strike the Jebusites, let him get up the water shaft to attack the lame and the blind, who are hated by David's soul. Therefore it is said, the blind and the lame shall not come into the house. And David lived in the stronghold and called it the city of David. And David built the city all around from the Millo inward. And David became greater and greater, for the Lord, the God of hosts, was with him. And Hiram, king of Tyre, sent messengers to David and cedar trees, also carpenters and masons, who built David a house. And David knew that the Lord had established him king over Israel, and that he had exalted his kingdom for the sake of his people Israel. And David took more and more concubines and wives from Jerusalem, after he came from Hebron, and more sons and daughters were born to him. And these are the names of those who were born to him in Jerusalem: Shammua, Shobab, Nathan, Solomon, Ebhar, Elusha, Nepheg, Jephthah, Elishama, Eliada, and Eliphelet. Okay. Here we have the next section. And what we see here is David establishing a throne. David establishing a throne. When you look at 1 Chronicles, you get a little bit more of the story here of what happened. Hebron was not a city and a location that would have worked for a capital. So he looks across the tribe of Judah, and what's right there on a hill, in a mountain in the middle of the tribe of Judah? A city of the Jebusites. A city of the Jebusites. And right there in the middle of Judah, they have a fortress And finally, David's saying, that right there, that's going to be the capital of my kingdom. But the only way to get in is through the sewer system. Through the sewer system. What we find in Chronicles is he actually tells the men, whoever is able to go in through that system and beat them, open the gates, let us all in, that is the person who will become the commander of all my armies. So, his nephew Joab is the one who does it and sneaks in and is able then to become the commander of the military. When it says that the walls of the city were built from the Millo inward, in Chronicles it also says with that David did part of it but didn't finish it. Who finished it? Joab. It was actually Joab that finished the rest of the walls. And so what we're seeing right here is for a time, things are going really good with Joab. For a time. We'll find later that he turns on David. But just some interesting things there. With all this, we see David established as the king, and now he has his throne. He has his city, Jerusalem, the city of peace. He has his own palace built from the cedars of Lebanon. Incredible when you look at it. But the writer of 1 Samuel is quick to point out it wasn't David who did it. It wasn't Joab that did it. It wasn't all of David's mighty men. Oh, they played a part in it. They played a part in that. But who is the one who actually established David? Twice it says. It's the Lord that did it. It's the Lord that did it. Always remember that. Who is it that does these things for us? It's the Lord. It's the Lord. I remember one day during Thanksgiving talking to a friend of mine who was very successful in business. Very successful in business. And in fact, he set his business up in a way that has just blessed his family and the next generation and the generation after that. But this one day I saw him and we were in a grocery store and ran into him. And I saw him reading something and I saw tears. And I went over and I said, "Hey, are you okay?" And he said, I'm just reading my daily devotional by Chuck Swindoll. And I said, "What is it?" I mean, making you cry, right? Right in the middle of a store. And he said, "It's all about Thanksgiving." And he said, this was on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. He said, I am so thankful. He said, people come to me all the time and ask me business advice, ask me how I've been so successful, and they don't believe me when I simply say, it was the Lord. It was the Lord who did all of this. Who did all of this. And I love that moment. It sticks out in my head. And just so thankful that I got to have that conversation with this gentleman before he passed. And just remember that. The good things that you have in life, don't ever think that you're all that. It's from the Lord and his blessings. Verse 17, when the Philistines heard that David had been anointed king over Israel, all the Philistines went up to search for David. But David heard of it and went down to the stronghold. Now the Philistines had come and spread out in the valley of Rephaim. And David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I go up against the Philistines? Will you give them into my hand?" And the Lord said to David, "Go up, for I will certainly give the Philistines into your hand." And David came to Baal Perazim, and David defeated them there. And he said, "The Lord has broken through my enemies before me like a breaking flood." Therefore, the name of that place is called Baal Perazim. And the Philistines left their idols there and David and his men carried them away. Quick side note, I think it's interesting in studying this, I heard a couple different people sort of mock the Israelites because they looked at it and basically they defeated the Philistines right here in the valley of the Rephaim, and it was like water breaking against them. And so David is like, they broke before us like water. So it's Baal Perazim, which means the breaking through, right? And I actually heard a couple different people who were like, yeah, they weren't very original with their names, right? They broke through, so they named that place the Breakthrough, right? We're the same today. I mean, what's our major city? They looked out and they were like, hey, there's a port and there's land, right? Portland. So don't mock them. It's like we're just as creative as they are, really. Verse 22, and the Philistines came up yet again and spread out in the valley of the Rephaim. And when David inquired of the Lord, he said, you shall not go up, go around to their rear and come against them opposite the balsam trees. And when you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the balsam trees, then rouse yourself, for then the Lord has gone out before you to strike down the army of the Philistines. And David did as the Lord commanded him and struck down the Philistines from Geba to Gezer. Victory. Anointed, throne, victory over his enemies. And it's incredible. For all of the book of 1 Samuel and so far into 2 Samuel, we've had the boogeyman, the Philistines. Always right there, always antagonizing, always a problem. As soon as they hear David is now the king over Israel, they're like, we're going to get him. We're going to take him out. He fought against us for years. Then he came over on our side. Now he's over there with them. We're taking David out. And they go to the valley of the Rephaim. Where is that and what is that? It's a valley that's in Judah. In fact, when you go to Isaiah, it talks about like all the wheat that is there, and it becomes a place of agriculture. But it's also a place that's scary. It's a scary place, the Rephaim. What does that mean? The Rephaim, it can mean the dead, the shadows. So in some ways you can translate that, the valley of the death or the valley of shadows, okay? It's actually very close to Bethlehem, just right outside of Bethlehem, so south of Jerusalem. And you think about that, David grew up where? In Bethlehem. So this is an area that he would have been very familiar with. And in that area, there's monoliths. There are these ancient formations that are there. And with it, the Rephaim, again, dead or the shadows, it's also used to describe the giants of the ancient time. Basically, what we think is a tribe of Nephilim. The last of them was talked about in Deuteronomy, a king named Og. King Og was the last of them. Remember that when the spies went out to spy the land of Israel, of Canaan, that would become Israel, they came back and they were like, there's giants there. We're going to get crushed if we go there. That was this valley where they were once inhabiting, all right? It's a valley of the giants is what it's called, or the valley of the dead, the valley of the shadows. And yet it's in that valley of giants that can't be defeated, the valley of shadows and death, where David has his first and second victories against their enemy. And I love the way it comes out in this. You see David, he goes to the Lord. Will you help me defeat my enemies? Yes. Go get him. Takes him head on. He wins. The enemy can't get enough, though. Can't get enough. So that enemy comes right back. The giants are back in the valley of shadow, the valley of death. And so, once again, Lord, should I take them on? No. This time, don't take them straight on. Instead, go behind them. And when you hear the noise in the trees, know that I'm giving them into your hand. Isn't that just like the Lord? To do it in such a way where we cannot claim victory, where we have to say, it's all him. He is the one who has done this great thing. Absolutely incredible. So we have in this chapter David, finally anointed king and bringing all of God's people together, all the people of Israel. We have him established in Jerusalem with his throne. Absolutely incredible. And we have David, the anointed king, gaining victory over the enemies of God's people. They were in the valley of giants, the valley of death, the valley of shadows. I started out by saying what happened here 3,000 years ago still impacts the world today. We see it with recent events over this last week. As in the geopolitical system, we see both the U.S. and Israel bombing Iran. Israel, established 3,000 years ago under David. But what happened to them? They were judged and they were dispersed. But God promised Abraham that it would be the land of his people. He promised David about all of this. And so what happened? They went to Babylon, and God brought them all back again. That's incredible. And then what happened again 2,000 years ago? Well, they didn't know the time of their salvation was at hand. They crucified the true Messiah King. And once again, dispersed. But for a second time, God reestablished Israel. It's been such a hot topic over the last several months. People fighting and arguing about this. And people literally saying like, no, that it can't be that that's what God is doing with this. Really? There has never been a nation on the face of the earth that has been completely beaten, demolished, dispersed, and come back together, except the nation of Israel. And it didn't happen once, it's happened twice. When I say that to pastor friends of mine that struggle with this, they don't know what to do with that. They don't know what to do with it. The Lord is moving and doing great things. He's moving and doing great things. But all of this that we have studied tonight is merely a foreshadowing of not the present, but what will come. Revelation chapter 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth has passed away, and the sea was no more. I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." Heaven's finally here. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Let me say that again, and death shall be no more. Neither shall be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away. And he who was seated on the throne said, Behold, I am making all things new. Also he said, Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. And he said to me, It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty, I will give from the spring of water of life without payment. The one who conquers will have this heritage, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. But as for the cowardly, the faithless, the detestable, as for murderers, the sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars, their portion will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. What an incredible line. To the thirsty, I will give from the spring of the water of life, and it costs you nothing because he paid the price.